Hello everyone and welcome to my back deck garden. I am here to give you the August tour of this deck garden. So I already did a tour of my front garden for August. I will link that down below. But I garden on two rooftop decks here in Chicago. Both of them are 18 by 19 square feet. But this deck that I'm on right now is just slightly smaller because we have our air conditioning units back here, but it is still filled with plants. Like my front deck, it is also full sun, but we get the east sun. So we have the less intense morning sun, which means that my plants, like my hydrangeas, that maybe don't like very intense heat in the afternoon, do much better on this deck. So I'm going to take you around and show you how this garden is looking for August. Let's start with a sweep of the garden, and I realized I left my hose in the center, but that's fine, that's where it normally is. So here is the overall layout of the back deck. I mean, it is just a rectangle, but I have borders along the edges. I have some plants up on the ledge. I have a lot of raised beds, grow bags, some vertical planters here. But I think we should start over there by the entry, well, the entry to the deck, the exit to our house, with my dwarf hydrangea collection. I have 9 compact or dwarf hydrangeas sitting in front of my door. I put them here for a few reasons. The main one is that these hydrangeas fried. Anytime I would try to grow hydrangeas on the front deck, which had full sun, they fried. This is the morning sun, and I would say by about 12:30 to 1, they are completely in the shade because the sun goes on the other side of the house. So this is where my hydrangeas have thrived. It's really one of the few spaces on my rooftop deck gardens that I can get them to perform really well. And I am so happy being able to see these through the door when I am inside. So let's go ahead and start with these 4 over here. The first one in the front is, well, I mean, they're also pretty, but this is one of my favorites. It is Wee Bit Innocent. It was much more lighter pink. The blooms have started to fade, and I should probably do some deadheading on some of these in the next few weeks, but this is Wee Bit Innocent. Behind it, we have Let's Dance Ariba, which has these really pretty pink blooms. Anything that has a bloom that is pink can be switched to blue if I acidify the soil, but I don't want to put any extra effort into trying to keep my containers acidified enough for that. Over here then is Tough Stuff Top Fun, and then in front is Firelight Tidbit, and this is my first flower on this one actually, and that makes me really excited. So this one, Firelight Tidbit, is actually looking a bit larger than the other ones, so I'm probably going to swap this one and then the Tough Stuff Top Fun with each other again at some point, just adding it to my garden to-do list, which is an ever-growing list of things that I need to do. But these are the 4 that I have over here. On the other side of the door, I have 5 compact hydrangea varieties. So the one in front here is the Let's Dance Skyview. Also in, well, again, I love all of them, but this one was absolutely covered in blooms at one point, maybe about a month ago, that you could barely see the leaves. I did deadhead. There are some more blooms forming, but this one is absolutely beautiful. Behind it is one that was in my garden last year. So this is the Tough Stuff Aha. This is very similar to Tough Stuff Top Fun. There's no blooms on it right now because I did deadhead, but there should be more coming soon. Back behind it is another Let's Dance Ariba. So then I have Let's Dance Can Do and Let's Dance Big Band. I love having this wall of hydrangeas. It is my favorite thing to see coming out here every morning. I love hydrangeas, and I never knew if I'd be able to grow them just in a container garden. I do have a whole video showing me setting up this part of the garden, so I will link that down below because there's a ton of information in there, including more about the types of hydrangeas, the mature sizes, but I'm pretty sure most of these will be 3 feet at the maximum, which is perfect, again, when you're growing in containers. Now let me show you the other 3 hydrangeas that I have. These 3 right here are on wheeled caddies, and I do like having them as kind of just a border here in the center around my seating area. Now this one here and that last one down there, those are tiny quickfires. I got them from the Grand Garden Show back in September of 2022. So this is their 3rd year in the garden with me. All of these hydrangeas I overwinter in the garage because it is just too cold and too wet here for these to survive in containers. So that is where I keep them over winter. And I will go into much more detail with overwintering all of these plants when we get to that point in the season. But then the last hydrangea that I have is not compact, and I need to figure out where this is going to go, but this is Pinky Winky Prime. I think it gets to about 6 feet, which is not going to be happy in this pot for very long. There's also a tree trying to grow in there. Let's take you out. But I love this one. The flowers are already starting to get that really pretty pink on them, so I'm definitely keeping this. I just need to move it somewhere else and into a larger container. Now, even though it is the morning sun back here, I have had some of my hydrangeas get a little bit fried, especially when we've had very, very intense heat earlier on in the season. If that happens, I'll just remove those leaves over time. But so far, they have been doing great this season. Along the left side of my deck here is, well, I call everything a border. I really need to get a different name for these, but this is my lower border. We have our air conditioning units back there, and they need to be accessible throughout the season. But I have here in front some perennials that, again, I'm going to have to upsize. Even though they are still compact varieties, I am going to move them into a larger pot probably next season. Now, I did bring out all of the labels because these are not blooming right now. This one will have some flowers opening very soon, but I wanted to show you what they will look like once they flower as well. So first up is the Illuminati Sparks Mock Orange. It did have some white flowers on it, which are really pretty, and it does have a little bit of yellow variegation on the leaves. Next up is a Summerific Cookies and Cream Hibiscus. And I'm really excited because I didn't think I liked hibiscus because it just looks too tropical for my garden. Like, I like it outside of my garden, but not in my garden. But I'm in love with this one. I think it's the combination of the dark leaves and the white flowers, which makes it feel less tropical to me. So you can see a bunch of buds here, but it will have these really pretty white flowers on it. And there's at least 10 that I'm looking at that should start to bloom pretty soon here. Next, we have Scentlandia Sweet Spire. This one already has flowered as well. You can kind of see some of the remnants of the flowers there, but it also has these really pretty white flowers on it and also smells really nice. And then lastly, we have a Weigela. Ooh, I do see some of the flowers. Okay, I wasn't sure if this one was going to flower again. So here's what it looks like. But again, it has variegated leaves with that kind of lime green yellow and then the deeper green pink flowers. And look at them just starting to open up. That makes me so happy. Weigela was also a plant that I loved, but I'd only seen really large ones and I didn't know if I would ever be able to grow one in a container. And now I have one, and I think this gets to like 2 to 3 feet tall and wide, similar to the hydrangeas. Behind the potted perennials, I have some annuals in flower boxes that I got for free, which is fantastic. I've planted a similar planting in each. 2 of them are identical, one of them is just slightly different. But one of the plants I have fallen in love with this year that I'm going to grow more of next year is Angelonia. So that is what is pink here in the center of each of these 3 flower boxes. The specific one I have is Angel Face Cascade Pink. And look at how beautiful that is. I feel like this is a shape that I don't have a lot of in my garden because it grows both vertically but also out to the sides, so it fills the space really nicely, and I'm absolutely in love with it. Then on each side of the Angelonia, I have begonias. In these 2 flower boxes right here, I have the Double Delight Blush Rose. And in the third one over there, which should be in the middle, but I got them mixed up when we were having our air conditioner units maintained, so I should switch this at some point, but I'll do that later, which probably means never. But the begonias I have down there are the Selenia Apricot. So let me take you up close so you can see the color difference, which, I mean, you can kind of tell already, but the Double Delight Blush Rose, I'm in love. This is probably one of my favorite colors. It's a corally pink, really stunning. The leaves are more of a bluish green. And then coming over to the Selenia Apricot, not surprisingly, these are more of an apricot color. So it's definitely more of a yellowish orange, and the leaves are also much more of a yellow green. Let me come over to this one because I think this one has a few more blooms on it, but these are both incredibly beautiful, and I will be growing them again next year, assuming I can get my hands on them. And I really like how all of the colors of these plants play together, even though I kind of just shoved the perennials in front of the other border. But I like the pinks and oranges with the yellow/lime green variegation on some of these. I also like it paired with these like deeper purple foliage plants. I definitely want more deep purple foliage in my garden next year, so we'll see what I can find. But then at the end here is another one of the Coconut Appeal Black-Eyed Susan vines. And a few things, well, I think that's only one thing is different. I do have 2 plants in here, which is the same as on my front deck, but they're on a much shorter cage. This cage is about 19 inches tall. I think the other one is maybe like 3 feet tall. So it is getting a bit wild. I have trimmed it multiple times. It's trying to grow on here, but I am cutting it off because, again, this piece of the wall here gets moved if anyone ever needs to access the air conditioners. But isn't she so pretty? The little white and black flowers. I love this so much. It's just, I mean, it kind of looks like it's its own bush, right? I love that. And then back here I have some potting soil, and I have my tumbler composter. I'll do a scan of my back deck border here before we go up close. There are some things that I love. There are some things that I wish I did differently, and I will be taking all those lessons with me into 2025. But first, on each corner is an evergreen. I just planted these this spring. I had hollies that were zone 5, which is kind of pushing it when overwintering in containers in zone 6A. So I got these arborvitae. This tag I've saved. I think it's smaragd, but that is the variety of it. These should hopefully be able to survive. I think they are a zone 3 or 4. I feel like they were a 3 because I felt a little bit more confident about these than I did the hollies. I will still wrap them and protect the root ball in the container as much as possible. Again, I will show you that when we get to that point in the season, but I am not ready for that point of the season yet. So we'll go in a little closer. In the back, I have 3 raised beds lining the wall between the evergreens, and then just a bunch of pots down in front. And my color scheme back here, I tried mostly to stick to pinks, purple, orange, and white. There are a few other colors that popped up in here. But this bed on the left and this other bed all the way over here to the right are planted the exact same, but they're mirror images of each other, and then the center bed has its own plants in it. So let's start over here on the left. In the 2 corners, I have what I believe is my rose gomphrena. One of them was supposed to be salmon. They're both the same color, and I'm leaning towards that being more of a rose color than a salmon color. I have the autumn blaze celosia, which has been doing great. Some birds have found it, which I like to feed the birds, but they also ate so much of the celosia already. So this one is just, I mean, it's done incredible. It's grown kind of perfectly in this space because I want something that is mostly vertical, but not super straight up and down, so that it does fill out the space a little bit. But I love the idea of my plants getting taller than this wall so that everyone over there is like, oh my gosh, what is she growing on her deck? I don't know if that's what they say or if anyone has noticed, but that is what I tell myself. Over here I have the Cupcakes Blush Cosmos. Look at it. It is in its peak right now. Last year I had issues with my Cosmos not blooming until late, getting really huge with a lot of green leafy growth, but no flowers. And this year, they are just doing spectacular. I love when they dance like this in the wind. Down in front, I have my Hazasterhagen light blue asters. I had these on the front deck as well, but I originally, like when I was getting these, it was to put them in this border back here. These are so stunning, 100% growing these again next year. Cut and come again, so I've been harvesting like crazy. Behind it we have another China Aster. This is the king size apricot China Aster. Also in love with it. It's a really beautiful light peachy color. I put in a floret zinnia here to fill in the space. This was originally growing on my front deck in a separate pot of 3 zinnias. I popped it in here because here's what I'm finding. So in the front and center is Status. I love Status. I harvest it, I dry it, I use it in projects over the winter. I don't love it in a border bed because it just leaves an empty space here when it's not in bloom. And even when it really is in bloom, it doesn't fill out the space as much as I want. So one thing I'm taking away from this is to not use statice in my borders next year. They might just be in a separate pot somewhere else. But I think that is everything that is growing in this bed. In between these two raised beds, I have a dahlia. This is the Penhill watermelon. I say that because it hasn't bloomed yet. And the other one that I thought was Penhill watermelon on the other side of this raised bed is a yellow dahlia, and Penhill watermelon is pink. But this is the right size, so I'm hoping when it opens up, I'll be able to tell if this is in fact the Penhill watermelon. Center raised bed here, I have some more China asters in the back. Now, kind of again, what I'm realizing is the statice paired with these China asters. These are so vertical that they're really not touching, which is great for airflow. But when you're looking at this, I don't want to be able to see much of the brick. So next year I need to work on a better pairing of the more vertical plants in here with the plants that will get a little bit wider, like the celosia or the cosmos. I only put 2 cosmos back here because of how they did last year and just the underwhelming performance. I'm going to try to go for more next year and see how it does now that they've been performing pretty well. So the asters that I have Bonita Shell Pink, which is one of my favorites. It is at its peak right now. Look at that. Also, again, all these are cut and come again, so I continue to harvest off of these. But these are so beautiful. Also, Lady Coral Lavender. A very, very light lavender, like more light lavender than the Hazasterhagen, which are light blue in the name, but are actually a purplish color. This is a very, very light, powdery lavender color. And then another one of the Bonita Shell Pink China asters there. In front, in each corner, I have the Lavender Lady Gomphrena. One there, one over there. I actually love Gomphrena in the corners more than I thought because I think they do work. I mean, they're not trailing by any means, but they are kind of growing outwards, and it's filling the beds in the way that I want it to. I had Supertunias here last year, but they trailed so much they just got covered up by the plants in front of them. So this is perfect. I'm going to stick with Gomphrena in these corners for next year as well. I do have statice in here. I have some purple statice and some blue statice. And again, I think you can see, like, yes, the flowers are pretty. Yes, they are blooming, but there's so much open space here that it's just not what I really want. So because of that, I've been just plopping flowers in here. I got this sunflower from the Ball horticultural event, so I planted it here, even though it's not technically part of the color scheme. But there is a bee enjoying that sunflower. And I think I am going to put some more, well, I don't know, might put some more fall flowers in here maybe, but I do plan to plant bulbs in here as well and then tarp the bed. So we'll see what I decide to do with that. Now, this last bed, again, was a mirror image, but there are some plants, there's only one plant that wasn't in that first bed that I definitely need to show you. So same rose Gomphrena, but this is the tower, again, chamois or chamois, let me know how it's pronounced, aster. I love it so much. I need to, again, harvest off of this because some of them are kind of on their way out. But I wanted to leave this on here for the tour because look at this. So this is all one plant. This one behind it is the king size apricot. But look at that. Look at how full one plant is. Again, need to harvest so it continues to produce blooms. But it's stunning and I am in love. Again, another statice right there, not filling out the bed. And then we do have another one of the floret zinnias right there. So this, in between the two beds, is the dahlia that, again, was labeled as Penhill watermelon, but that is yellow. That is not pink. So I don't feel too bad plopping the sunflower in here now that there is a yellow dahlia, but I really love this. This is the problem, is that when I get one that's mislabeled and I love it, I don't know what it is to then be able to find it later, but it's probably a decorative dahlia because the plant is smaller and the flowers are also smaller than the dinner plate dahlias. In front of the raised beds are a bunch of pots. I actually had to do what I call the pot scooch, where as the plants grow and fill out, I need to move the pots further apart to actually make space. These used to be much more condensed and closer together. But I do have some pots in here. It's kind of a mishmash, but I am using a lot of the same varieties. So over here on the left, I have the Superbena Pink Cashmere, which was one of my favorites from last year. This one it has even bloomed more heavily than this so far. It's kind of, I'd say, in its medium peak of bloom. I also have in here a Supertunia Bubblegum Vista, which I've done a big cutback on a bunch of my Supertunias back here. Issues with budworms, issues with just the heat and getting a little bit too scraggly. But that is what is in this pot. This pot here, I have a peony, which I just planted very, very early spring. It's my first year growing peonies. I'm trying it out. I'm gonna see how it goes. I have very little knowledge on how to do this in containers at this point, but I didn't want to just have a small peony plant in a large pot. You know, it's gonna grow, hopefully flower in the next year or two, so I just threw a bunch of annuals in with it. Is that a good idea? I don't know. We're gonna go with it. I have in here the Sun Patient Purple Candy. Love this color so much. I have in here the Super Bells, I think it's called Magic Pink Lemonade now. It used to be Prism Pink Lemonade. So I grew this last year. I love it because it still is full of flowers. Again, I just did a cutback and there's some budworm damage on it, but it still is as full of color as the Supertunia Vistas, but it just doesn't get as wild. So depending on how much space you want to fill in, I really like this as a smaller mounding plant full of color. These were just labeled begonias that I got from a garden center here in Chicago, so I don't know the specific varieties of those. Coming over here, this one also, again, did a cutback on the Superbena Pink Cashmere's Flushing Back. I also have the Supertunia Vista Fuchsia. Another container with peonies. Now so the peonies aren't like doing that well, but we'll see what happens. I don't know if this is the sun, if it's too much water. We'll see if this one survives, but this is all an experiment. But let's focus on what looks really pretty. So I have more of the Selenia Apricot Begonias down here, and then this is also stunning. And we've had a bit less intense heat, so I feel like the Sun Patients are just really at their peak right now, but this is Orchid Blush. Isn't that so pretty? There are two plants in there that are filling out that pot really nicely. And then these three containers are basically duplicates of the ones I just showed you. So the Superbena Pink Cashmere, Supertunia Vista Fuchsia, Pink Lemonade, the Purple Candy, Sun Patients, the unidentified begonias. There's a peony in there somewhere. This is also the Superbena and Supertunias, but these are two of the dahlias from the Proven Winners bulb collection. I can't remember the names, but they will be pink when they open up. So I'm excited because there are little tiny buds on those. Oh, and then back here, I have the same begonias that are in that border, but I put them in here with some gladiolus, which is done blooming. I should probably cut these back. I don't plan to keep them for next year, I don't think. I don't know, maybe. We'll see. But they were so pretty. So that covers everything that's along this back wall. Before I head to this wall, this is also the same Angelonia. I think this is actually where I love it the most as my little table topper because it's so pretty. It is, I think, 2 plants in here, which is probably not a recommended container size for 2 of these plants, but I think it fills it out perfectly. It's something on the table which doesn't take up the whole table, but still has a really good growth habit for like sitting in the middle of my coffee table. These are a bunch of impatiens I also got from the Bull Horticultural event, so I need to figure out what to do with these. I think they're gonna go downstairs, maybe in the parkway, or I might just leave them here because I don't feel like planting them anywhere else. So they're really pretty, they're pink, they fit in with the color scheme back here for now, so this is where they're going to stay. Behind the couch here is another border. This is my Dahlia and Zinnia border. Now, not everything is in bloom right now. I've been, deadheading, harvesting the flowers, trying to keep them as productive as possible. And then behind them on the ledge is my Supertunia Vista bubblegums. I think you can tell which 2 the budworms found and which one it didn't. But look, this is why I love it, because look at that one over there. That's how full they can be when the budworms don't find your Supertunias. So similar, I just did a big cutback on these. I added some bloom boosting fertilizer, and hopefully they'll flush back with growth really quickly. They usually do. Every time you do a cutback, it might be like a few days kind of looking bare, but then you'll start to see them full of color again. So let's pop back behind the couch. I might have to scooch it a little bit forward. But everything here is one plant in a 7-gallon grow bag. And then in each 7-gallon grow bag is a 19-inch plant cage that I use as supports. Now, if you look from like here up, everything looks really good and healthy. Well, not the super juniors, ignore those. But if you go down, you can see from the high heat and humidity, I've been removing the leaves where I've had disease issues, which is why some of these plants are starting to look like trees. And yes, I have had powdery mildew back here as well. Not quite as bad as up front, but still covering the zinnias back here. So let's start here on the left. These are the precious metal zinnias from Floret. Again, this is one plant. I have harvested so many zinnias off of here, but it's a mix. You weren't sure which color you were planting in the mix, so each of mine are a little bit different, but these are more of a pinky color, but I'm really in love with these, and I feel like they have a little bit of a sheen on the petals as well. Next, I have the Lilac Thyme dinner plate dahlias. So there is one that is just starting to open up. I think this is one of the first to bloom this season as well. I have a Fairway Spur, which is an orange dahlia. Then I have another of the precious metal zinnias. This one is not currently blooming, but some buds are forming. I have an Otto's Thrill dahlia, which is pink, a bud they're just about to burst. I have the Thomas Edison dahlia, which is a really pretty deep purple. Another one of the Floret zinnias, and you can see again how I mentioned it was a mix. So this one is orange. Again, a really pretty, more pastel-y orange. Absolutely love it. I have another Lilac Thyme dahlia, another Fairway Spur dahlia. This one I feel like has been the most impacted by whatever fungal issues are happening here. And then I did have another zinnia here, the same precious metals, but I think because this was so packed in here, like there wasn't much airflow, the powdery mildew was terrible, so I ended up pulling it. And then I have another Cupcake Blush Cosmos here. What I really do like about this is that last year I had a border that was low to the ground, similar to what's over by the air conditioning units, and it just got lost. You couldn't see any of the plants behind the couch. But here, growing plants that get taller than the couch, I really do feel like I'm just nestled into the center of my garden. I might just do dahlias next year, just because the powdery mildew has been so bad with the zinnias, but then, I don't know, maybe next year the powdery mildew won't be as bad. You never know, but that is that border back there. And then the last section is right over here. Let's start with the largest pot in my garden. This used to have a beach plum tree that died from root rot. So in here I put 6 total plants, 3 different varieties. I put the Supertunia Vista Bubblegum, the Supertunia Vista Fuchsia, and then I was nervous that the Sweet Caroline Light Green Sweet Potato Vine wouldn't be able to keep up. But I think, as you can see here, it's kept up no problem and is actually the most vigorous, I feel like, right now. Again, I did do a cutback on the petunia, so they'll be flushing back, but I've loved having this here, and I've loved having something lower because the beach plum was taller, so it blocked my view of whatever was behind it. This I like much better. And then we have Nanette, my bucket planter. So behind her, first of all, are my morning glories. Again, my morning glories don't usually flower, but I grow them for the leaves. And I love having that backdrop, although now I'm wondering, with the bucket planter here, which is the first year I've had it, I don't know if I necessarily need that anymore. So I might grow it again, I might not, we'll see. But I have here a total of 12 buckets. I got this off of Amazon. It's meant to hold bouquets, so I did drill holes in the bottom of each, and I love it. It's doing exactly what I want, acting as a vertical planter, just adding a wall of color to my garden. So starting with the top buckets here, I again have the Pink Lemonade Magic Super Bells right there and there. I have the Snow White Gomphrena, Carmine Gomphrena. This was good for the top to put more vertical plants in here, or plants that didn't trail like crazy. Coming down a row, I have my Supertunia Vista Jazzberries, which very hard cut back. These were taking over. You couldn't even see the Selenia apricot begonia there at all, which I think it actually kind of liked having that shade, but I've cut it back so you can see it. I have the campfire marshmallow bidens over there on the left, which now that they are getting more sun after cutting back the supertunias are starting to produce more flowers. And then the bottom row here, I have the Supertunia Vista Fuchsia, and then the two sun patients. So the purple candy right there, and the orchid blush right there. And that's all the plants in my garden. So now, I'm gonna do a very slow spin in the center of my garden to show you everything one more time. This is also the point when I'm wondering what my neighbors think of that strange woman spinning around in her garden, talking to herself. But at least I'm having fun while I do it. So this is my August back deck garden. I love this back deck so much. I think because, well, one, the couch is out here, so that's why I spend most of my time out here when it's warm enough and not raining. I start my mornings out here, and I like the calmness that comes with kind of sticking to a color scheme and not going too crazy. Also, I have a lot more just decorative flowers back here. I do have a good amount of like cut and coming in flowers that I'm harvesting. Most of what's on my front deck is meant to be harvested, not necessarily meant to just look pretty, where there's a lot of things here that are just meant to look pretty. So I think that adds to my love of just relaxing back here. And also just the view of the church is like the perfect borrowed background. But this is my deck, and I'm really happy with it. So let me know if you have any questions. I will link down the front deck video in case you missed that. I will link down the playlist. I'll link down all the information that I can think of. But if there's anything else that you want to know, leave it in the comments below and I will answer you down there. So thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video, which is going to be very exciting. Bye.